Why could life be so unfair? Was this the price the main character had to pay for his own strength? But he had something that could change his entire life. Could save him. After all, it was the Grail, the thing that could grant any wish. So he made a wish. Because the guy never wanted to be. He was blinded by the light radiating from the Grail. Soon, his wish would come true. He was just an ordinary guy working a regular job. Like all the losers, he had a really mean boss who paid a pittance. However, that evening, he was genuinely feeling unwell, and his boss let him go. The main character was heading home. The people who worked with him noticed that something was off with the guy. But when the boss heard them talking about him behind his back, he got furious. He was ready to fire anyone who dared to do that. After all, everyone in the company knew what the main character had been through. Besides, lately, the boss had been quite nice to Kim because he felt sorry for him. On his way home, Kim stopped by a flower shop since it was his wife's birthday that day. He also picked up some groceries to make dinner. After that, he decided to head home. But no one was there to greet him. He felt lonely in his own house. Kim started cooking dinner, and after a while, he set the table for the celebration. It was the first time he tried to cook something like his wife used to. It saddened him that he couldn't be with her. After taking a shower, the guy continued to work. Kim was tired after a long workday, but he couldn't fall asleep. Lately, he hadn't been able to sleep well at all, so he decided to do some work. His notebook was his diary, and it was the only place he could share his biggest secrets. Celebrating his wife's birthday together was their tradition. Every time, he would come home early and make her favorite vegetable soup. He really wanted to hear her voice again, but that was impossible. He could never cook like she did. And for his child, he bought a toy. His daughter wasn't there with him either. It was hard for him to write about it, but he tried to hold it together. Kim remembered all those happy moments they had spent together. The main character desperately wanted to see them, even if just for a few minutes. After all, everything had happened so suddenly. And he hadn't had time to do anything to try to save them. The guy missed them terribly. And because of that, he couldn't hold back and started to cry. His tears dripped onto the pages of his notebook. He felt really bad. He sat there until the early morning of the next day. The pages in the notebook were stained from his tears. Suddenly, something happened that he never expected to see. A bright light began to emanate from the notebook. It lit up the entire room in his face. What was that? Strange things started happening to him. All the entries in his diary had vanished. Before him lay an empty notebook, and in a panic, he tried to find something, anything. But it was all in vain. However, on one of the pages, he saw just one word. But how could it have appeared there? Was someone trying to send him a message? Again. He could meet them again. Kim had the chance to see his wife and daughter. The notebook told him so. The next day, he wanted to leave work early again. But the boss knew it was his wife's birthday the day before, so he let him go again. The man tried to cheer him up, understanding how hard it must be for him. That day, he canceled the meeting again because he really wanted to see the main character and waited until he felt better. When he got home, the man tried to figure out where his entries had gone. After all, he had been keeping a diary for over 6 months, and he was really sorry that everything had just disappeared. Moreover, starting from the first page, new notes began to fill it right before his eyes. And everything that had been written in his diary was coming to life. But the most important thing was that he could meet his loved ones again. And if this became true, he would have to venture into another world to make it happen. Because that's what was written in his diary. And it was supposed to happen that very evening at 10 o'clock. Kim began to panic, realizing that time was running out. He literally had just a few minutes to prepare. And the less time he had, the more nervous he became. After all, what awaited him there, in the other world? Suddenly, the clock struck 10. Immediately, strange things began to happen to him. He started traveling through time and felt that he was about to enter a new world. And it happened. When he opened his eyes, he realized he was in an unfamiliar place. Moreover, he couldn't remember what had happened to him and tried to recall everything. He found himself in a forest, surrounded by many other people who had ended up there just like him. Kim understood that everything written in his diary was true. But this was just the first step into another world. Everything was just beginning. From that place, their training was supposed to start. But the guy already knew what would happen next and was ready for anything. To begin with, people had to envision the weapon they desired. Moreover, they were not allowed to use firearms. Those who thought of it were given bows and arrows. Meanwhile, the second part of the trial began as waves of zombies started attacking the people. No one could move when they saw those monsters in front of them. But the main character knew he had to fight. After all, he had nothing to lose. The world he lived in had been destroyed after the death of his loved ones. The battle began. Kim fought for the chance to be with his loved ones. To stop a zombie, you had to decapitate it. Moreover, for each kill, he earned experience points and achievements. He felt that with every new achievement, he was becoming stronger. So he started killing them with even more fury. His physical strength was also increasing. And he saw how other people were dying from zombies because they couldn't decapitate them with bows. However, he wasn't planning to help anyone, as he was only thinking about his own rank. He charged forward into a new wave of the undead heading his way. He had to become stronger. And when it was all over, he gained hundreds of experience points and many achievements. But he felt extremely exhausted. Additionally, information began to appear directly in his mind as his intellect level had also increased. The game was the foundation of that world, and immediately after the trial ended, a leaderboard appeared before the people. He saw that other people were also trying to fight to raise their ranks. From his diary, he knew that the most important thing was to level up magic, but at that moment he needed strength and agility. After the trial, only 198 people remained alive, but only the top 100 would move on. And all the others were simply doomed to die. At that moment, Kim realized that only he knew what would happen next, as he was the only one who had received the diary. There were two ways to earn skill points. The first was to kill monsters. The second option was to kill other people. For that, you could earn half of their points. At that moment, the second stage of training began. People started fighting among themselves. And the hero realized that it was possible not to kill monsters at all, as there was a chance to earn much more points. A real panic broke out among the people. No one wanted to die. But those who were weaker were doomed. And when people saw the main character and that he had the most strength and points, they were terrified for their lives, as none of them were a match for him. Kim tried to unite the people and wanted to stop the fighting among them. After all, they could join forces and continue killing monsters together. Moreover, he knew that they would need many more people going forward and they couldn't let everyone die now. But a new wave of zombies was approaching, and he went to keep fighting and survive in this brutal world. Suddenly, he heard a woman's voice. Turning around, he saw a woman he recognized. It was Jung Yu, and she wanted to go with him, as she couldn't defend herself alone. She also believed she could help him. But the hero refused. After all, she would only be a burden and would get in the way. Besides, she couldn't defend herself at all, as she had never killed. She only hid and watched as others killed to survive. And he left, leaving her behind. The main character had wasted his time talking to her. From his diary, he knew that a cave was very close. The path through the cave led to the mountains and was so narrow that only one person could pass through at a time. After a while, Kim managed to find the entrance to the cave. He also knew that there were many monsters inside, so he prepared himself. Moreover, the monsters were strong, and it was very dangerous in there. But those who could survive in the cave would become stronger than anyone else, as it would bring them a lot of points and power. The cave was incredibly spacious. Suddenly, he heard a strange sound. He managed to defeat the monster attacking him and sliced it in half. Kim knew that this would attract even more creatures to him. So there was no time to relax. For killing the monster in the cave, he earned a whopping 10 points, while a zombie only gave 1. He also knew that at the end of the training, the rewards would correspond to the number of points earned and his level. Kim wanted to explore the entire cave and kill all the monsters inside. He was scared, but he wasn't about to stop. So he ventured into the dark, narrow passage filled with wicked and grotesque creatures. He constantly felt his body adapting to the fight, growing stronger. He also found some moss. And he knew that at this moment, giant ants were supposed to appear, and they were very strong. They were dangerous because they always traveled in groups. Suddenly, they appeared. There were a lot of them. And when they noticed the main character, they began to attack. They were drawn to the bread that Kim had. Realizing this, he threw it to the ants, which distracted some of them. He started killing the others that remained. For each ant he killed, he earned 8 points. But it was easy. They didn't resist and weren't as tough as the worms. They had no armor, so Kim could handle them with ease. After a while, there were very few ants left, as most of them were dead. And he kept fighting, not stopping. The last remaining ants were the strongest, and they were tough to deal with. But even that didn't help them escape. In the end, all the creatures were destroyed. When it was over, he received a huge number of achievements and an ant's skin. This was a special skill he could learn. He was overjoyed, knowing that gaining a skill during training was practically impossible. Because of this, he managed to increase 5 stats, and the more he had, the better he could master his skills. If the diary was to be believed, the next day other people were supposed to come to the cave. But when he tried to turn the page to see who they would be, he couldn't. He wasn't able to do that yet. Kim tried to remember and understand who could be sending him information through the diary, and he was very curious about what would happen on the next page that he couldn't turn. Moreover, it mentioned the Grail. But what could that mean? Meanwhile, the leaderboard updated and the main character was in first place. The man in second place was furious when he realized this. He had started killing everyone and was very strong, but even that didn't help him. Many people recognized the main character. They had seen that he was the one who had pushed ahead right from the start and separated from everyone else. The man understood who she was talking about, as he had seen with his own eyes how he had distanced himself from them. Meanwhile, Kim wasn't sitting still, he continued to kill monsters. Besides, the girl said she knew where he had gone. However, she didn't want to share that information so easily. In exchange for the information, Young Yu asked for the life of the poor boy. And then, the big guy agreed. But he also had certain conditions that she had to meet. She understood what he was hinting at. Suddenly, she grabbed a sword. She had been working towards this goal for a long time and wanted to seize the moment to kill him and take half of his points and power. Kim didn't stop. His level was so high that the ants were no longer a serious threat to him. After all, he had slaughtered hundreds of them. When the fight was over, he reviewed his list of achievements and points. His strength and endurance were at a very high level. It hadn't even been 2 days of trials and he had already managed to pull far ahead of everyone else. But his mana was low, and he wasn't planning to stop. He was trying to find a more serious opponent for himself. And he did find one, as after a while he managed to locate the Queen Ant, who was a true boss. But when he saw her, he realized he had made a huge mistake. She was gigantic, several times larger than the other ants. He tried to hide, knowing he wouldn't be able to win in an open fight. Moreover, there were many regular ants around her guarding her. He thought that by killing the ants, he could better prepare for the battle with her. However, he couldn't let her go and decided to try to defeat her the next day. He was starting to doubt. Suddenly, a leaderboard appeared before him. Because he was the leader, his strength and all stats increased and leveled up. His stats rose by 8 points. Also, he had plenty of bread for bait, so he decided to give it a shot. At first, he tried to distract the smaller ants from the queen and lured them with bread. And he began to kill them one by one. This allowed him to further boost his strength before the duel with the boss. However, there were so many ants, and he was exhausted from the continuous fights. Moreover, he realized he had angered the queen. But he noticed she wasn't attacking. Instead, a new wave of ants was approaching him, and with his last strength, he began to fend them off. Additionally, a new type of fly started attacking him, and they were very hard to fight. However, he was close and wasn't planning to retreat. He was confident that his strength was enough to take on hundreds of enemies. With each new kill, he gained experience points and grew stronger. But at the same time, he was getting very tired. Soon, his stats would grow and he would feel relief. But he couldn't stop because the enemies were closing in and had even started attacking him. He fought back. A bug bite was saved by the skill he had gained during the fight. He had to fight to earn a new D-class skill for defeating the Queen Ant. So he charged at her. This was supposed to be the decisive battle as he was confident he had enough strength. After taking down all the ants, he realized that he was left alone with her. And this moment was crucial for both of them. The queen prepared to attack. However, he was ready for it and wasn't planning to flee. He grabbed his sword and got ready. He was scared, but he believed he had enough strength. Suddenly, a strike. He had been waiting for this moment, and when it came, Kim managed to kill her with one precise move. Meanwhile, other people had found the cave and were already there. The villain was trying to find the boy to kill him and take his power. He knew that killing in the cave earned more points than killing zombies, but he was focused on destroying people. The man wanted to catch and kill the main character, but he understood that he wouldn't stand a chance in an open fight. However, he realized that the main character was tired, so he wanted to take advantage of that. After all, if he caught him, he would take the top spot in the leaderboard. When he killed the boss, he received a massive amount of points and experience. Moreover, he finally managed to learn another skill. Now, a powerful shell was forming on his skin, which would protect him. And in dangerous situations, this could save his life. This could be considered an achievement because he immediately had an advantage over everyone else. But that wasn't all. As a bonus, he was supposed to receive items. Points were the foundation. Thanks to them, one could gain true superpowers. Skills were something one could control. And the last were items which could raise stats and help learn new skills. It was through items that one could gain incredible strength. So this was the most valuable thing he could find. At that moment, he found a chest. Kim was able to acquire a bunch of different skills and points, and he wanted to check how they worked. The first thing he found was very strange, because it didn't resemble ordinary magic. The main character was satisfied and didn't regret risking his life to defeat the boss. Meanwhile, the people moved on, and by the number of corpses, they realized they were almost there. Suddenly, the villain stopped. Next, he wanted to go alone to check what was ahead. There, he saw something that shocked him the most since arriving in this world. Right in front of him lay the body of the dead queen. And he felt scared, because at that moment, he locked eyes with the main character for the first time. It became very quiet, and no one dared to speak first. But Kim couldn't understand why people had come to the cave, as the diary had said they would come much later. Did they all come for him? But when the boy saw Young Yu, he understood everything. She was the one responsible for them finding him. The future in the diary changed because he was doing things his way, not as it was written. The villain began to get angry. He couldn't believe that Kim could take down all the corpses by himself. And besides, he didn't look tired at all. Everything was completely different from what he had expected. Killing him wouldn't be so easy. He also knew that the main character's stats were greater than all of theirs combined. And even together, they wouldn't be able to defeat him. At that moment, the main character approached him and ordered him to back off. The bandit was frightened and, having no choice, stepped back. He simply allowed the main character to move on. After all, he had no chance against him. Kim was no longer an ordinary person. And then he realized that he needed to kill monsters to increase his own stats. Still, he promised to catch him another time. Meanwhile, people continued to kill each other. In their quest for points, they were so ruthless that they were ready to kill each other with their bare hands. A real slaughter was happening among them. The weaker ones were doomed, as they couldn't defend themselves. Suddenly, time was up, and out of the 148 people who were alive, only 100 could move on. In a panic, she started begging to be chosen. But most were doomed. After a while, a hail of arrows rained down from the sky. All the people outside were killed. Those who managed to survive found themselves in a new place. They were all locked in a cramped chamber. They had no idea where they were or what was happening. Few of them knew each other. And the main character was relieved that the bad guy and his gang weren't with him. It was at that moment that the third stage of training was about to begin. 3 doors appeared before the people. Only 10 could enter the red door, 5 the blue, and just 1 the white. Each of them had to make their own choice and move on to the new level of training behind the doors. The red door was the hardest, with no guarantees that those who went in would survive. The blue door was a bit easier. But what did the white door mean? As soon as someone entered the white door, their training would end right then and there. Suddenly, one of the men ran forward. He wanted to be the first to enter the white door. Others tried to catch him, but the door wouldn't open. The order of choosing doors depended on each participant's score, and everyone was supposed to choose in turn. So, the main character had to choose first. But for him, the choice was obvious. Without hesitation, he chose red. This surprised the others, as they thought he would pick white to finish his trial. Many wanted to go with him, believing he could protect them. They all thought they could survive if they went with him. Next was the guy in third place, and unexpectedly for everyone, he chose the white door. Immediately, the crowd started yelling at him for making such a choice. After all, he had no guarantees that he would stay alive after choosing the red door behind the main character. And he wanted to survive the trial and didn't want to pass up that chance. Other people also began to choose, and some picked the blue door. They were scared to go for red since they didn't know what awaited them. The decision was very tough, as so much depended on the team that chose the same door. However, the main character didn't pay attention to the others' choices. He believed he had made the right choice and wanted to see the trial through to the end. He had a conflict with the guy who chose the white door. But once everyone had chosen, the doors opened. One of the people who was last in line was terrified. As soon as he saw the white door open, He decided to force his way in and win the right to live for himself. He started running, but when he tried to enter, an invisible barrier stopped him. The others were angry at him for acting that way, and they wanted to punish him. But Kim intervened in the fight. He stopped the man who wanted to take revenge on the jerk for trying to enter his door. He was also very angry at the main character but understood that he had no chance against him. Besides, time was running out, as in a few minutes the doors would close forever. All those who didn't make it inside would be dead. Still, he went through the white door and vanished. The door closed behind him immediately, and it was unclear what awaited him ahead. The hero, along with his team, was left alone and was also preparing to enter their door. Meanwhile, the man who had been beaten lay on the ground. He didn't want to take the risk and was very scared, so he decided to stay. All the doors closed. The poor man didn't get up, but he didn't even know what awaited him ahead. Suddenly, he understood everything. Because when he felt the searing heat, he saw that the room was on fire and all those who remained outside were doomed to burn alive. This was the end. Meanwhile, the people who entered the doors found themselves at a new level. The main character and his team ended up in some strange place. After exploring it, he realized there were no people there. It also seemed abandoned. His teammates joined him, having decided to follow him. The boy wanted to get to know them. The girl's name was Kim Eun-ki and the other guy was Yoo Young-gyu. However, his clothes were stained with blood. It became clear that he might have killed people to gain more experience and points. After all, the blood on his clothes didn't look like monster blood. Immediately, he felt ashamed, because he did it to stay alive and not die. And for that, he didn't consider himself a coward. They were supposed to be informed of the rules for training at the 3rd level. It was to last 10 days. People listened carefully to the rules so they would know what they had to do. Twice a day, monsters were supposed to come to the village, and they had to defend it from them. Also, inside the village was a stone that they had to protect at the cost of their own lives. Because if it was destroyed, they would die too. Anyone trying to leave the settlement would be automatically moved inside to protect the stone. After all, it was safe outside the village and the monsters didn't bother people. The hero understood that he shouldn't count on their support and would likely have to do everything himself. To start, he wanted to head to the center of the settlement to see the stone they needed to protect. At that moment, he realized that defending the village alone would be a very tough task. Soon, the attack was set to begin, so they couldn't afford to delay. He immediately asked the people if they would fight, but despite being very scared, they decided to stay. It was supposed to be 10 people, but there were only 3 of them. However, the hero believed there should be many more people in the settlement and they were all outside, safe. So when the attack began, they would all be moved to the stone and help them defend it. And if one person left, everyone else would follow. So they needed to stick together and protect each other. After all, they were a team. Moreover, those who fled would sooner or later return to the settlement to protect the stone. So there was no sense in that, because their lives depended on the stone they needed to protect. At that moment, the hero realized that their small number could work to their advantage, because no one would dare to leave. Meanwhile, they managed to reach the center of the village where they saw the very statue they had to protect. Killing monsters at the 3rd level gave way more points. Moreover, they could increase their own stats and become stronger each time. And at the next stage, they would have an advantage over those who chose other doors. After all, the people who managed to go through the red doors were much stronger than all the others. However, Kim Eun-ki was angry at the hero because for him it was just a game. Suddenly she fell silent, because the monster attack was about to begin very soon. Suddenly the first one appeared. They were grotesque goblins. They were armed and there were a lot of them. The hero wanted to run forward while the others stayed by the stone to protect it at the cost of their own lives. He didn't have time to explain anything and was already running ahead. And he started killing monsters one by one. Kim realized they weren't very strong. However, there were just too many of them. Yoo Young-gyu panicked as he saw that even the main character couldn't handle them, because at that moment, one of the monsters lunged at him. This made him very scared, and he realized that at that moment, the life of his team depended on him. So he gathered his strength and began to defend himself. More and more monsters attacked him. The hero understood that they might not be able to handle them. But just at that moment, when he got distracted, he was nearly killed. At the last moment, he managed to dodge and miraculously stayed alive. And he continued to fight. Suddenly, one of the monsters appeared behind him. He realized he wouldn't have time to dodge. So he used his ability which he had gained after killing the boss. A hard shell appeared on his skin, and the monster trying to hit him didn't understand what was happening. Its sword broke, and at that moment it was left weaponless. Kim killed it with one precise move. However, a new problem arose. His friends couldn't handle the monsters, so he needed to go help them. Moreover, the girl was injured, and to keep their defense from falling, he turned back. Then he realized it would be much harder than he had imagined. When it was all over, they injured sat by the sacred stone. The boy was okay. Meanwhile, the girl had a serious wound. Blood was flowing from her shoulder, and the injury was very deep. Yu Youngyu wanted to help her and bandage her wound. The main character understood that if things got worse, he would have to fight alone. They needed to regain their strength and eat as another attack was imminent. It was already dark and the people were resting and preparing for the next battle. Suddenly, Yu Youngyu approached the main character and thanked him. He was grateful that the guy had helped him and prevented the monsters from killing them. And he decided to repay him in this way. But it seemed that wasn't all. He started to speak but immediately fell silent. Kim realized he wanted something from him. As it turned out, Yu Youngyu just couldn't forget his words. He felt very ashamed for killing people. But he had no other choice. He was only defending himself as they wanted to kill him. Because of this, he felt bad, burdened by his own guilt. Then he started to cry. He didn't want to die, and if he hadn't taken that step, he would be dead by now. The main character tried to comfort him and thought he had been very harsh with him. But he kept crying. Suddenly, he noticed that there was no one else around. It was just the two of them, and it was unclear where the girl had gone. They searched the entire area around them, but she was nowhere to be found. Could she really have escaped? Most likely, she was scared for her life, knowing she could die in the next fight. But she couldn't handle them alone, as it would be incredibly difficult. Even her smallest support could have helped them immensely. There was hope that the number of monsters would also decrease. However, the situation was very tough and they needed to prepare for the worst. The main character believed they should think positively. Besides, he was counting on Yu Youngyu's support as he couldn't protect the charm alone. But Yu Youngyu wasn't planning to run away. He was curious about what would happen to them if the stone was destroyed. But most likely that would mark the end of their training. And they would die. Yu Youngyu had to take on 10 monsters. The main character would have to handle all the others. It was tough as their levels weren't the same. But Yu Youngyu's task was simply to buy time while Kim took them down. Soon, the fight was about to begin. It all started. There were no fewer monsters. They were holding up much better than he thought. The hero activated his ability again, which saved him from death. Moreover, he was fighting back and taking down enemies by the dozens. On top of that, his strength was constantly increasing, and he felt much better than in the first duel. For killing one monster, he earned 18 experience points. But he saw how hard it was for Yu Youngyu. They began to surround him, so the hero needed to help. He knocked one of them out with a rock. It was unclear how long he could hold out like this. But he was also gaining strength and experience points, which helped him a lot. Compared to that time in the cave, his points had grown significantly. And he was satisfied that he had chosen such a difficult level. After a while, they managed to defeat all the monsters. Soon, they were supposed to receive food and other supplies. From his journal, he knew that training behind the red doors lasted the longest, and just completing it successfully could earn them a lot of points. Moreover, he would receive a reward and gain some skill. Suddenly, Yu Youngyu received one. It was called the Devil's Pact Plus, and activating it would increase strength and agility by 5 points. He gained the skill despite having killed very few creatures. The hero envied him as he had killed 98 and hadn't received anything like his partner. Meanwhile, the girl continued to hide outside the village. She had been sitting there for several days and was glad she had decided to escape. She was scared, knowing she wouldn't be able to handle the monsters. Moreover, she realized they were doing well if they could hold out for so long, and she didn't want them to be killed. After all, their lives depended on her own. So, she wasn't planning to return and help them. Meanwhile, the 4th day of their struggle was underway. Each day was getting harder, and Yu Youngyu was very tired. They were already fighting living trees, orcs, and rats. What awaited them next? Besides, he had an injury. The main character wanted to help him. To stop the bleeding, he pressed on the wound. Then, he began to bandage it. Yu Youngyu doubted he could hold out until the end as he felt his strength waning with each passing day. And this was only the 3rd stage. All the training was still ahead. But Kim tried not to think about that. He wanted to finish it all and just move on with his life. Moreover, His partner couldn't die, as that would doom the main character's life as well. He also had younger brothers whom he didn't want to leave without support. They were probably crying because he had been gone for so long. For him, this was especially hard. He started crying again. He was very scared. And then the main character remembered his wife and daughter. He recalled why he had participated in the trial in the first place. After all, it was his only hope of seeing them again. He also couldn't let his partner be killed, and he decided to protect him and the stone at the cost of his own life. After all, they had only a few days left, and then the training would be over. They would be able to become much stronger, and it would be much easier for them afterward. They needed to rest as another fight was about to happen soon. He remembered the birth of his daughter. He recalled how she turned over for the first time. With his wife, they were the happiest parents in the world, and they rejoiced at having such a beautiful child. They also loved each other, and they cherished every day they spent together. Suddenly, the baby started crying. It seemed she wanted to eat. The main character loved her more than anything in the world. He tried to spend as much time with her as possible. Moreover, she resembled his wife, and because of that, they constantly competed for her affection. After all, everyone wanted their daughter to look just like them. Yu Yoongyu noticed that he had become very sad. They had managed to survive 9 days, and the last one had arrived. The monsters hadn't appeared all day when suddenly, they heard a strange sound. A danger notification appeared before them. Right now, they were supposed to fight the level 3 boss. It was a giant, evil bull, and along with it came an army of skeletons. There was no time to hesitate or let them get too close. So, they needed to attack first. The main character was ready to take on the boss himself. Soon, the fight was about to begin, and everything depended on him. But he didn't stop. He charged straight at the bull. Blow after blow, he tried to injure it. But the creature was very strong and could resist. Meanwhile, Yu Yoongyu was also preparing to defend himself. After all, an army of skeletons in armor was in front of him. Before the fight, his strength and endurance had increased by a few points, and he believed he could help. Meanwhile, the battle between the main character and the boss continued. The creature had thick skin, but he managed to cut through it. But even after that, the bull continued to resist. It seemed the bull was about to throw him off. And that's when it started destroying buildings in the city. Everything was in ruins. However, the hero managed to survive. He was lucky, as he was able to leap off its back at the very last moment. But this wasn't the end. The creature was still alive and ready to attack again. Suddenly, he realized that the wound on his body had become smaller, and he watched as it regenerated. The creature was back to its initial level. The hero couldn't even imagine it would be this hard. Meanwhile, Kim Eun-ki was hiding in one of the houses. She couldn't understand what was happening in the city. Meanwhile, the fight between the main character and the boss continued. Yu Yoongyu was still dealing with the skeletons. The girl, who was watching from a distance, couldn't comprehend how they had become so strong. She was afraid to return to them, thinking they would want revenge for her escape. She was sure they wouldn't be able to forgive her and would seek vengeance. What was she supposed to do? Was the bull really immortal? After all, despite the massive number of blows the main character dealt, the boss remained unscathed. Suddenly, it struck the hero with its tail. But Kim dodged it again. In response, he struck back, and he chopped off the tip of its tail. But could it regenerate that lost part of its body again? And suddenly, it started happening. Its tail began to grow back rapidly. Did he really have infinite regeneration? And did it not drain his strength at all? His opponent was truly very dangerous. So all he could do was keep fighting to protect the stone. However, this time the monster was preparing to counterattack, and it met him with its own horns. The guy wasn't deterred and struck again, trying to crack its skull. But all his efforts were in vain. Yet he noticed a crack forming in its head, revealing a bright light. Could that be its weak spot? Suddenly, there was an explosion. But Yu Yoongyu managed to shield the hero with his own body and stop the flames. When Kim realized what had happened, he started screaming, and saw that his partner was injured. It turned out that among the army of skeletons, there were mages who began attacking them. Just as he was about to help Yu Yoongyu, he got hit by a tail. The blow was so strong that he flew several meters away. But this was not the end, because the bull kept chasing him. The only way to protect himself was to use his superpower, which the hero did. But even so, it was incredibly hard and painful for him. Using it drained a lot of points and mana. He found himself trapped, pinned down on both sides. The bull wouldn't let him go, and at this rate, the main character could just suffocate. He was lucky to have acquired the skill that could save his life. And at that moment, he used it. He managed to escape the deadly trap. Reaching the stone on its head, he struck, and it began to crack. When the crystal shattered, all the skeletons attacking them fell apart. Was this a victory? Suddenly, a message appeared on the screen in front of them declaring that the boss was dead, and his entire army had perished. The attack was halted. At that moment, the girl left her hiding place, and Yu Youngyu was trying to find the hero, who was trapped under the debris of bones. Had he died? But then Yu Youngyu heard his voice. He had already started crying, but felt immense joy when he realized his partner was alive. Everything was over. He tried to approach him to help him out from under the rubble when suddenly, he stopped. He was crying, unable to believe that it was all over and they were victorious. Then the worst happened. Yu Youngyu's face was filled with pain. The main character realized what had happened, because right behind him was the girl who had fled the village after the first attack. She had returned. The girl stabbed him with his own sword. The wound was severe, as the sword had gone right through. Kim realized he was in big trouble. He had lost his friend and couldn't help him. But when Kim Eun-ki realized what she had done, she was terrified. Why did she do it? She was convinced they wanted to kill her and was trying to protect herself. Because she just wanted to survive. And she wasn't planning on dying in a place like this. After she killed the guy, she intended to do the same to the main character. After all, she could gain their experience points and become the strongest in the trial. And at that moment, she saw the guy stuck in the bones of the boss and unable to escape. So, she lunged at him to deliver a fatal blow. Suddenly, she realized she had made a mistake, because she felt excruciating pain and saw blood on her own face. The main character had managed to sever her arm. He wasn't dying and had plenty of strength left after the victory. He had gained a ton of experience points and was able to restore his strength and heal his wounds. The girl had made a terrible mistake and he had no choice left. So he was going to kill her. Everything was over. He was the only one who managed to survive the grueling trial and move on. But he wasn't going to leave his friend behind and approached him. He was still alive and the hero didn't want to let him die. So he had a special weapon. In the cave battles, he had obtained a potion that could heal wounds. And that's what he poured on his injuries. Immediately, his wounds began to heal. He felt a sense of relief. Because the low-level elixir could save a person once. In dangerous situations, he could have used it for himself, but he chose to give it to his friend to save his life. And he didn't regret it at all because during the trials, he had become his friend. But Yu Youngyu was burning up and didn't understand what was happening to him. After a while, his wound completely healed. And that saved his life. The main character felt bad about wasting the potion, as he wanted to keep it for himself. However, he remembered how terrified his friend had been, and the incredible efforts he had made to help him. He was even ready to give his life for him as he had shielded him in a tough situation. He fought for him and never ran away. So, he believed it was the right decision. Yu Youngyu started crying again and threw himself into the arms of his savior. This deeply touched him and the hero started crying too. He felt a very strange sensation, but Kim reassured him that it was just a passing emotion, as he was feeling unwell. He really did feel awful. His head was pounding, and he was extremely tired. But then a new notification appeared indicating that their training phase had ended. Soon they would advance to a new level and receive additional items and skills. They also had the chance to earn extra rewards. The main character gained a lot of experience points and leveled up. And because of that, he was able to become the strongest once again. He also received exclusive items. And strange armor appeared on his arms. He wanted to check how they worked and what their true purpose was. But he couldn't figure it out for a long time. They could also move to the next training location by passing through the doors that appeared before them. Now, this was definitely the end, and they had to move on. The men didn't want to delay, so they headed for the doors that had appeared before them. They found themselves in the same place where it all began. Also where other people were returning, including the same guy who had chosen the white doors. For him, time had stopped, and it felt like he hadn't even entered the doors. The thing was, the fourth stage began for everyone at the same time, regardless of which doors they chose. And while they fought for 10 days and grew stronger, for others that time had stopped. People who didn't choose a harder level and couldn't earn more experience points could only regret their choice. But not everyone managed to pass the trial. Many people died. Suddenly, he saw his evil enemy, the same guy who had tried to take his life at any cost. But had they really survived, just the two of them? Their clothes were stained with blood, and it seemed they had just been killing their comrades and stealing their experience. At that moment, when all the people were in one city, the rules of the fourth stage were about to be announced. From that moment on, all players had to form groups, and a confrontation between teams would begin. The camp that could kill more monsters would earn more team points, and the group that won would be able to move on. But for those who lost, there would be no next stage. Team points were awarded if they killed monsters behind the white doors. The black doors could provide individual points and personal stats. Additionally, every night at the same time, people had the opportunity to earn various items. And even if a team lost, the 10 players with the highest individual points could still move on. Most players saw no point in going through the white doors since they were already at the top of the rankings. Suddenly, everyone witnessed that the main character and Yu Youngyu were the first to enter the white doors. But why they made such a choice, no one could understand. After a while, they found themselves in a new place. Everything around them was covered in greenery and grass. The monsters there were very strong, and most players couldn't handle them. Moreover, there were too many of them, and they always moved in groups. Suddenly, a group of monsters that had been chasing a man was wiped out. He didn't understand what had happened. However, when he saw this, he was overjoyed, because the main character and Yu Youngyu were killing them, and it wasn't a tough task for them. The man was amazed. How could they be so strong? And then he realized he had made a huge mistake by choosing the white doors. Because of that, he hadn't gained any experience and was now too weak to fight. And the guys were thrilled to see him in such a terrible state. Moreover, the bracelet he received as a gift was quite good and helped him a lot, because it was simply an incredible item. It reduced his strength expenditure by 20%, and now using his skills was much easier. Also, when he used it, his power increased significantly. They wiped out every monster that appeared before them, even the strongest ones. With their immense power, they handled them easily. The first day of the fourth training phase came to an end. When the team scores were tallied, it was clear that the main character was once again in first place. He had a significant lead over everyone else. However, it seemed that Kim Do-hyung, his biggest rival, was also venturing into the dark depths of the forest. It was also evident that no one else was earning team points besides them. Moreover, they had amassed a huge number of points, leaving everyone else in awe when they found out. Additionally, the main character received a reward for surviving the day, coins that could be exchanged for prizes after training ended. He knew that items bought with these coins were extremely valuable in the journals. Therefore, he wanted to save them and planned to use them at the very last moment. Furthermore, he was trying to negotiate with others. When he stepped forward to address them, everyone was frightened, knowing he was the strongest. The main character had a way for all of them to stay alive. Kim Do-hyung overheard their conversation. He criticized the hero for what he wanted to do, unable to believe that everyone could survive. Moreover, the main character's behavior infuriated him. And at that moment, he began to shout. Everyone started watching to see what would happen next. But Kim Do-hyung was scared. He realized he was weaker and didn't dare challenge him. Kim Do-hyung was against it and didn't want everyone to unite as a team and work together to survive. He believed he could survive by just collecting individual points. But there was the final stage, and no one knew what would happen there. Perhaps they would need to combine their strengths again. And this was a great opportunity to prove himself. He wanted everyone to first start pooling their efforts and earning team points, after which each could decide what to do. He also thought that earning 1,000 points a day would be enough to get by. Personally, he planned to earn twice as many points since he was the initiator. It seemed everyone agreed to his terms. And Kim Do-hyung realized that everyone had sided with the main character. And because he had no support, he was extremely angry. Suddenly, he attacked the main character. But the hero didn't want to argue with him, believing it would only drive them further apart. Moreover, the man couldn't believe his words without a single piece of evidence. It seemed they would never be able to unite. However, there was no time to waste, and the main character wanted to go hunting again. But he understood that people needed to gather together and help one another. And he did this precisely because it was written in his journal. But was it really necessary to save everyone? Besides, after this stage, the team that earned the most points could receive a prize. So, without even resting, he headed to the white doors to continue racking up team points. Immediately, a fight broke out, for before him stood a gigantic monster ready to crush him. The hero's bracelet helped him, making his strike significantly stronger. Therefore, he easily dealt with it, and the creature was dead. Moreover, for killing it, he received a massive amount of points and experience. But he realized that, with one swing of his sword using the bracelet, he had lost half his stamina. So, he needed to conserve his strength and be much more cautious. After everything that had happened, Yu Yongyu looked at himself and the others, wondering who among them was the real monster. Sitting on a tree trunk with his exhausted body, he hesitantly asked Kim if they had ventured too deep into this dangerous forest. It seemed to him that each step brought them closer to death. But Kim saw no danger in it, only a challenge. For him, risk meant progress. His confidence was unshakable. These words stirred something deeper in Yu Yongyu than mere surprise. He paused for a moment, gathering his courage to say something important. He began to acknowledge that for Kim, this had long ceased to be just a fight for survival. Kim silently continued his thought. His gaze was directed at the sky, as if the answer was hidden there. And indeed, what next? Just a return to the old, familiar world? Or something more? Yu Yongyu stood silently, feeling a wave of emotions rising in his chest. He tried to hold himself back, but everything he had bottled up burst forth. Kim just looked at him, saying nothing, but understanding was evident in his eyes. Suddenly, Yu Yongyu could no longer hold back. He rushed to Kim and hugged him tightly. This gesture was so sincere that Kim couldn't contain himself, tears welled up in his eyes. In that moment, he realized how important this friendship had become to him. And although pain and fatigue clung to his body, his heart was filled with warmth. But Kim felt something was off. His head was heavy and his body felt sluggish. His condition worsened with each passing minute, yet he tried to hold on. Inside, a strange, anxious voice emerged. Something was looming. The forest was enveloped in tense silence, broken only by the quiet voice of the boy who doubted whether they could win together. His thoughts were sincere, but uncertainty permeated every word. But their conversation was suddenly interrupted by an outside voice echoing from the darkness. People jumped in surprise. Someone unfamiliar was approaching the camp. It was Kim Do-hyung, the one who always appeared unexpectedly and left chaos in his wake. Smirking boldly, he assured them he didn't want to fight, though his blood-stained clothes told a different story. His words sounded calm, but something ominous, almost predatory, glinted in his eyes. People were on edge. Any move he made, they were ready to interpret as a challenge. Yet he responded with feigned sincerity, claiming he had come with a proposal. But no one believed him, for when Kim Do-hyung smiled, something dangerous always lurked beneath. Kim Do-hyung smiled as if the whole situation was part of his game. His voice, filled with self-assurance, only heightened the sense of danger. Meanwhile, the main character and his friend were trying to catch up to the fleeing figure. They raced through the underbrush, leaving a bloody trail from their wounds. Ahead, like a shadow, moved an unknown, fast, agile, and merciless monster. Its smile was twisted, as if it derived pleasure from this chase. But the pursuers were running out of strength, injuries, losses, fear, everything blended into one endless breath. Yu Yongyu stopped, breathing heavily, barely holding back his emotions. His fist clenched so tightly that his nails dug into his skin, rage consumed him. He realized they were being deliberately led to monsters to be destroyed. And now he had only one goal, to catch this freak, even if it took an eternity. It was clear this could be a trap, so they couldn't afford to take risks. Therefore, they decided not to risk it and turned back. Just then, doors appeared before them, through which they could enter and return. But he couldn't just let the goblin go, as he had read about it in his journal, so he promised to catch it at any cost. They turned back, and the second day of the fourth phase came to an end. The tallying of results for each participant and team began. Suddenly, the hero noticed that 6 people were missing. And it was clear that his opponent Kim Do-hyung had already begun executing his plan, killing everyone weaker than him. Moreover, he had managed to secure the support of others he had intimidated. And he realized that the opposing team had scored far more points than he had. But what had really happened, and why did they act this way? After all, they had agreed to earn 1,000 points each day. Yet Kim Do-hyung denied any wrongdoing. He, along with the others, didn't want to listen to him, believing that team points weren't that important. And then he accused the boy of not wanting to agree with him. It angered him that Kim Do-hyung could easily leave others to die. And then he began to approach him. The atmosphere grew tense as it seemed a fight was inevitable. Kim Do-hyung was furious with him, struggling to keep himself in check. Despite this, Kim remained calm. And then he challenged him. His friends stepped closer to him. Yoo Young-gyu tried to calm him down, knowing they couldn't fight against 10. Moreover, they couldn't force them to listen. At the same time, Yoo Young-gyu drew his sword and wanted to try to kill the main character. However, his partner stopped him. After all, they had indeed broken their promise and he shouldn't start a massacre. He explained that they wanted to earn team points on the last day, as individual points were far more important to them. However, Kim didn't believe a word he said. He had no choice, so he simply walked away. And his friend ran along with him. Yoo Young-gyu only allied with people to get rid of the main character and kill him. After all, he could never overcome him on his own. And everyone understood this. Moreover, his partner believed that without his death, they wouldn't gain any benefit. After all, they promised to save everyone and wanted to wage a real war. Because the main character knew how to sway people to his side. This could mean that the hero was deliberately avoiding conflict with them. And he was much smarter than they initially thought. All they could do was gradually move up and continue gaining experience and points. After all, it wasn't necessary to start with them, there were many others, weaker ones. The main character truly intended to fight them as he knew that sooner or later it would happen. So, he wanted to get it over with as soon as possible. But even despite that, it was too much, even for him. After all, he was the one who had been against killing from the very beginning. But there was still something else that bothered the main character. Everything was as written in his journal and he knew that one team of 6 people would disappear. And it was Kim Do-hyung who took their individual points and experience. This was Park Seung-soo's team and they were the biggest threat. And Kim knew that the killings would continue and if this wasn't stopped, he would have no allies left at all. But this was very dangerous. And then he asked Yoo Young-gyu if he was on his side. After all, it was now dangerous to walk alongside the main character and they might also have to kill people to survive. Hearing this, Yoo Young-gyu began to shout. Kim was silent. He was very tense at that moment. And then he began to speak very confidently and seriously. A new day began. The main character and Yoo Young-gyu were trying to catch the goblin that was fleeing from them. After all, he knew that a very valuable reward could drop from it. Moreover, they couldn't catch it just by running after it. So, the main character came up with a new plan. And the goblin didn't stop, continuing to flee, it was faster. The goblin tried to escape. He was running, but the guy was right on his tail. He attempted to chop down the trees the goblin was jumping on. But nothing was working. The nasty little creature managed to get away and stay intact. He also tried to slow down the hero by throwing dirt at him. It worked as he was able to break free. Grabbing onto a tree, he stopped. And he started laughing, mocking Kim. But even it didn't make the guy give up, he was determined to catch him at any cost. Suddenly, Yoo Young-gyu warned him about a threat from the other side. Because right in front of him, a huge monster appeared. It turned out he had guessed right and the wicked goblin had led them into a trap. But Kim realized this could be his chance to defeat him. He prepared for battle. The monster was incredibly strong, easily uprooting trees. But at that moment, the goblin relaxed, thinking the monster would take care of the boy. So, he had only one shot. Gathering all his strength, he began to attack. He believed he could win. Yoo Young-gyu tried to warn him, but the hero wouldn't listen. A new threat appeared, a tree was flying straight at him. And with a single swing of his sword, he split it in two. After that, he was ready to take down the monster. And he succeeded. The path to the goblin was clear, and he managed to wound him with his own sword. It seemed like it was all over and his plan had worked. He caught him at the moment he least expected it. Yoo Young-gyu was impressed by his strength and agility. How did he handle such powerful opponents so easily? He felt ashamed for doubting him. Meanwhile, the day was ending, and the returning people noticed that many had not come back. A team of people was preparing to take a risk and venture into a dangerous area as they were falling far behind in team points. It was risky, but they had no choice. Despite their fear, they moved forward. Suddenly, they heard a strange sound. And one of the kids felt a sharp pain, something attacked her. It became clear they had walked into an ambush. It was the enemy team of Park Seung-soo. And they were back on the hunt. They began to kill those who were weaker and couldn't defend themselves. Kim Do-hyung was taking them out because they had a lot of coins, and the man agreed to give up all the coins he would collect in exchange for his life. But Kim Do-hyung understood that if they survived, things would get even tougher. as he wouldn't be able to avoid a confrontation with the hero. The poor man started screaming, realizing he couldn't convince Kim Do-hyung not to kill him. Besides, he didn't want to wait. So he simply gave the order. After that, his whole team drew their weapons. And soon, a real massacre was about to begin. But why were they so brutal? Were they really that evil? People began to plead with them, but even that didn't help. And all the people caught in the trap were doomed. Suddenly, Kim Do-hyung stopped. He saw the hero moving in his direction. And that moment became pivotal as the tension was incredibly high. But everyone knew that Park Seung-soo's team had been killing everyone else from the start. And they would never stop, continuing until the very end. But the hero could put an end to all of this. And Yoo Young-gyu, who wasn't planning to leave his side, was with him. Yoo Young-gyu wasn't afraid, knowing that after the goblin's death, they would receive a very valuable reward. They got armor, potions, and many valuable items. The hero also tried to find a potion. And suddenly he spotted it. It was a liquid, yellow in color, and he was going to check how it actually worked. Luck was on his side as the liquid was very rare and hard to obtain. Yoo Young-gyu also started picking out different items for himself that he could use to become stronger. But Kim was the type to be satisfied with just the potion, letting him take everything else. He immediately drank it. After a while, all his strength was restored and his mana increased by 20%. He could also recover faster. He felt a pleasant warmth throughout his body, his wounds healed. There were also many other items. The things were truly valuable and they were lucky. Yoo Young-gyu wanted to try out the new weapon. He swung it and easily sliced a tree in half. He didn't expect to become so strong. After all, the skill he had gained was very rare and powerful. He couldn't believe that now they could be among the strongest participants in the trial. Moreover, they had rare weapons and armor. The hero also managed to gain additional power for his own sword. Yoo Young-gyu realized that his friend knew a lot about the world and all the monsters. After all, he never made mistakes and always made the right choices. It seemed to him that Kim could see the future. He didn't even understand how his words affected the hero. But they had one unfinished business. And at that moment, they were supposed to go hunting. But this wasn't an ordinary hunt, and Yoo Young-gyu understood this very quickly. They couldn't escape and had to fight against a larger number of enemies. Park Seung-soo's team tried to justify themselves, thinking that only by killing could they survive in a brutal world. The boy had never been this cruel in his life, and at that moment he was ready to kill him. The poor people began to flee. But Kim Do-hyung couldn't allow that and started chasing them. But the hero blocked his path. This was the moment when the fight was supposed to happen. But Kim Do-hyung mocked him. He didn't think he could harm him because he had more people. However, Kim wasn't scared at all. On the contrary, he was ready to take the risk. He wanted to do it for the sake of the others who would take his example. And then, he confessed that he had special abilities. His words made Kim Do-hyung nervous, as he couldn't even imagine that the hero could be that strong. And then, he ordered his team to attack. But the people were scared. None of them dared to go first. And after a while, some of them simply fled. Kim Do-hyung charged in and tried to injure the boy. He was very nervous and tried to give it his all. Kim saw this and remained calm as the man was no match for him. At that moment, he was ready to use all his abilities to win. Moreover, he had the advantage in strength, and he could easily handle his assault. Kim Do-hyung was shocked that the hero was able to resist him. Suddenly, he pushed him away, and Kim Do-hyung flew several meters away from him. At that moment, other members of his team began to attack him, but the hero was ready. So, he easily took them down. Additionally, Yoo Young-gyu wasn't standing still either. He was helping him. His opponent was the criminal's girlfriend, who had betrayed the hero. The fight continued and the enemy team was suffering heavy losses. One by one, people were dying. That's when they realized they had made a huge mistake. After all, they had no chance against the hero and his strength. Kim Do-hyung didn't understand anything, because this couldn't be happening. He couldn't believe that the hero could be stronger, so he charged at him again. Kim was ready for this and simply waited for him to come closer. And then he met him with a brutal punch to the stomach. Kim Do-hyung found himself on the ground. And the hero struck. He didn't want to kill him right away, so he first chopped off the man's arm. It hurt and he realized he had chosen the wrong path. Kim just stood there, watching his enemy bleed out. It seemed he was waiting for Kim Do-hyung to say something. And he began to plead for mercy. But it was too late. Kim wanted Kim Do-hyung to apologize to those he had killed. But the man refused and didn't want to do it. And then the hero was no longer going to hesitate. He killed him, brutally and coldly. He gained half of his experience and strength. His girlfriend realized she was next and tried to justify herself. After all, Kim Do-hyung had threatened her and forced her to do things she never wanted to. Her words made Yoo Young-yu stop. He pondered. And the woman continued to apologize to him. But she didn't know that it wouldn't help her, as Kim didn't believe her and killed her too. He didn't feel sorry for her, as he knew what she had been like from the very beginning. He also noticed how nervous Yoo Young-yu was. He yelled at him for stopping and not finishing her off. He needed to get a grip, as next time he could just die. Immediately, Yoo Young-yu felt downcast. But there was one more man who managed to escape, and at that moment the hero wanted to find him. As it turned out, the man from the enemy team had fled from the very beginning. He wasn't about to give up that easily and was confident he could come up with a plan to defeat him. The thief wanted revenge for his team and his fallen comrades. Suddenly, he heard a strange sound behind him. And there it was, a gigantic monster standing before him. He had no chance of defeating it. So he planned to run. But then, blood from the monster splattered across his face. And he realized he had been sliced in half into 2 equal parts. But who could be strong enough to take him down so easily? Just as he began to fade away, he stopped, because he saw that it was the main hero who had found him. Kim wasn't going to let the man go again. He wanted to end this once and for all. His gaze was resolute and he looked incredibly dangerous. Immediately, the man began begging for forgiveness, pleading for mercy. He believed he could change and was ready to join Kim's team. However, the hero didn't give him a chance to finish. He killed him brutally and coldly, just as the criminal had done to others. After that, he turned back to Yoo Young-yu. But he noticed that the hero's face was somber. It was all because of the people who had died, and he regretted what had happened. He immediately began collecting the stolen coins. But Yoo Young-yu didn't want to do that. Kim insisted again, handing him the money because if they didn't take it, someone else would take advantage of it. They had to survive at all costs and get through this tough stage. The news that the strongest team of criminals had been wiped out quickly spread. Everyone knew that the main hero and Yoo Young-yu had taken them down together and managed to get their revenge. However, as the numbers dwindled, most people became very frightened, as winning was now harder. At that moment, the main hero interrupted a conversation among one of the teams. He believed that such a gap could be closed quickly. Even the 20,000 points separating them didn't seem like such a big deal. But how could they rack up points so quickly? In reality, it was much simpler than they thought. They just needed to keep fighting and killing monsters, and the hero promised to handle everything else. The man continued to slay monsters, racking up individual points for himself. But what did Kim mean when he said they could handle everything themselves? Yoo Young-yu couldn't understand his plans. Besides, they had been hunting monsters for over 10 hours, so they needed to rest. They were trying to catch up to their competitors and win, even by a small margin. So they left the room and were heading back to the hall with the others. Meanwhile, the 4th stage had come to an end and it was the last day of the stage. Soon, the results were to be revealed. Everyone was eagerly waiting for them, and they hoped their team would win and make it to the top. It became clear that only 10 would survive. So, most of those who participated in the training would perish. Kim had done everything he could, so he tried to stay calm. After all, he had killed the Golden Goblin and taken out the enemy team. Now, all that was left was to win the team competition and secure a prize spot based on points. Suddenly, a message appeared announcing that the points for each team were being tallied at that very moment. The main hero took first place in individual points. Yoo Young-yu was in second place right behind him. But the team points for all the opponents were equal. And everything happened just as Kim had wanted. Because no one had died and everyone received notifications that they had advanced to the next stage. People began to rejoice as it seemed his plan had worked. Because there were no losers, everyone had won. Immediately, the crowd started celebrating. They had all managed to survive and escape. And they did it. Suddenly, strange things began happening to the people and many of them started to simply vanish. The same was happening to them. Yoo Young-yu panicked. But the main hero promised they would meet again soon. And then he disappeared. The 4th stage of training had come to an end. Moreover, Kim's team had scored the best in team points. For that, he received a reward. He also found himself in an unknown place and couldn't understand what was happening to him. All his stats increased by 4 points. He hadn't worked so hard for nothing. Additionally, he received a lot of coins, and from that moment on, he could spend them on things for himself. He had a total of 162 gold coins. Immediately, a terminal appeared before him. It was a device through which he could spend money and buy various items for himself. However, there was nothing valuable there, just items he already had. But his attention was drawn to skills that could also be purchased. One of them was particularly interesting and caught his eye. And this skill seemed to be related to his bracelet, because they had the same name and seemed to complement each other. So, the hero didn't hesitate and chose it. Moreover, the skill was really good and could be leveled up. He bought the skill and then moved on to study it. Immediately, strange things began happening to his body, and he felt a warm sensation. Furthermore, another bracelet appeared on his left arm. He examined it and realized it was just like his old one. From that moment, his 5th stage of training was about to begin. The reward for the next stage would also be determined after its completion. He also knew that the next level would be very tough even for him. Suddenly, large doors appeared before him. They were meant to take him to the next level. Without hesitation, he walked through. It was hard to imagine what awaited him ahead. He was breathing heavily. There was no turning back, so he had to keep fighting. He didn't care what monsters lay ahead. He was ready to do anything to see his family, even just once. After a while, he found himself in a new place. Other people approached him, surprised by his sudden appearance. The boy had ended up in the middle of a medieval castle. At that moment, a battle was underway and many soldiers were trying to defend the castle from enemies. They also asked him for help, as they couldn't handle the enemy army on their own. And then the hero remembered that this was exactly what was written in his journal. Before him stood a massive army of the undead, relentless and unyielding. They wanted to break through and kill everyone inside the castle. This was what the main hero was meant to do. It was his mission. The people were trying to hold the gates to prevent the undead from breaking in. But there were so many of them that the defenders simply ran out of strength. Moreover, the dead felt no fatigue or pain. They had no fear. Suddenly, a sword flew into the head of a skeleton that was almost squeezing through a gap. It was the main hero ready to take on the fight. At that moment, he charged toward the undead, preparing to battle an entire army by himself. Immediately, he began to take them down by the dozens. It was tough, but he didn't stop. Many enemies fell, and he managed to buy some time. The people had the chance to close the gates and prepare better. Suddenly, one of the skeletons managed to get close to him and grabbed his armor. After its touch, his gear began to melt and burn. Kim killed it. But he realized he couldn't let them get too close. After all, their bodies were made of poison, but they were very slow and weak. And if he was careful, he could easily defeat them. He also understood that the monsters might fear sunlight. So he just needed to hold on a little longer. And he managed to do it. When the sun came out, the monsters began to vanish. They burned in its rays. And that was the only effective weapon against them. After the battle, an unknown warrior approached him. It was Max, and he was responsible for the defense. The man thanked the main hero for his help in the fight, as without him, the undead would have taken the castle. He also didn't understand who Kim was and where he had come from so suddenly. But the hero didn't want to talk about it and promised not to interfere with the people in the castle. Max agreed and allowed him to stay, as he needed skilled warriors like Kim. He also had a request for the main hero. He explained that the castle had been under attack by the undead for over 10 days and they could constantly resurrect and appear in even greater numbers. The people only knew that they disappeared at dawn and were very afraid of the light. But where they came from and why they were trying to take their castle was unknown to anyone. However, they needed to hold out for just 10 days as reinforcements were supposed to arrive then. But the hero understood that holding out for 10 days against an army was far too simple. He knew this was not the end. Max pleaded for his help, realizing they couldn't handle the undead alone. In return, he promised to reward him generously. But suddenly, the hero stood up and walked out. Before starting his new task, he had some matters to attend to. Soon, evening arrived. And the undead were approaching the castle again, but now there were many more of them. Max tried to figure out where the main hero had gone, but he was nowhere to be found. For a moment, he thought the boy had simply run away out of fear. But they had to fight, and he gave orders to his soldiers to prepare and take their positions. Suddenly, one of the archers pointed down at the enemy army. He had seen someone fighting the undead alone. It was the main hero who had been one of the first to charge into battle and was trying to win. He was very focused, ensuring that the undead couldn't get close to him. However, there were too many of them and he decided to retreat to regain his strength inside the castle. But this was not the end. As the undead began to break through, they were trying to smash down the doors, forcing the people to hold them back. Suddenly, Max managed to find him. He yelled at the hero for fighting them alone. But Kim discovered the real reason they were appearing. He found a group of shamans hiding in the woods, summoning waves of the undead every night. So, the people and the bravest warriors set out to find them, ready to punish the criminals. However, the main character wanted to go alone, believing his strength would be enough to handle the enemies. He knew this was a training exercise and anything could happen, so he wasn't sure if he could protect the people walking alongside him. After a while, they managed to reach the very spot. They caught the shamans, but they said nothing and didn't confess to their crimes. By doing so, they only hastened their own deaths as Max and his soldiers were furious. But the other shamans were confident that the soldiers wouldn't be able to stop them. After all, it was about to get dark. And with the arrival of darkness, they felt completely different. Suddenly, the main character struck, hitting right at the center of their sacred circle. The ground beneath their feet began to crack. At that moment, the shaman realized that Kim was no ordinary soldier, and he wanted to take his power for himself. They needed to hurry. They began chanting spells, trying to summon monsters to aid them. At the same time, the people charged forward, trying to eliminate the mages. But could the mages really summon the undead even when the sun was shining? The main character had a very bad feeling, sensing that something terrible was about to happen. The shamans covered themselves with a protective dome, but the man managed to break through it. Soldiers eager for blood and revenge tried to slip through the breach. But suddenly they felt sick and could no longer control their own power. The shamans managed to invade their minds. Kim tried to do everything possible to save the soldiers and ordered them to retreat. But it was too late. Right in front of them appeared an incomprehensible creature summoned by the shamans. It was a true demon, beginning to devour the trapped people who couldn't move. The hero had never seen anything like it before. Was this really his training? It was incredibly hard to resist when he suddenly saw strange shadows in the woods. But the scariest thing was above. The creature that appeared could communicate with the shamans and was listening to them. They gave the order. The target of the monster was the main character. And then the demon got angry. He nearly crushed his master as he didn't consider the boy a worthy opponent. The monster didn't let him finish speaking and simply crushed him. The soldiers were terrified. After all, the monster was truly horrifying and dangerous. It was gigantic, had wings, and wielded deadly sharp weapons. The hero wanted to fight it one-on-one while the others dealt with the mages. Max didn't want to let him go, but he understood they had no chance. The demon mocked the boy, not believing he could be a real challenge. But the hero didn't back down. He was ready for what might be the toughest fight of his life. The moments before the battle were the hardest he had ever faced. He didn't feel fear, but he was trying to find the weak spots on its body. But this was truly a dangerous creature. He hoped that, by using all his strength, he could slice it in half with one blow, just like he had done with the orc and other creatures before. But the demon was much stronger, and it wouldn't be that easy. He had to wait, but the demon was already charging at him. The boy managed to dodge the powerful attack. It was as if the demon teleported toward him, moving incredibly fast. Another strike. But the boy managed to escape this time too. At the last moment, he dodged again, realizing there was no time to hesitate anymore. So, gathering all his strength, he struck. After all, he had to win before the sun set. Somehow he managed to sever its arm. And it worked, as he realized the demon could be wounded, especially since he hadn't been fighting at full strength. Suddenly, the demon stopped. He noticed the boy's bracelets. And then he understood that the boy was indeed not an ordinary human. At that moment, the hero also began to mock him. Suddenly, another strike. This time, Kim didn't manage to dodge and felt the full force of the demon. Was this the end? The people watching began to scream. However, the main character continued to stand his ground. His hands trembled as he exerted tremendous effort to resist. The demon couldn't understand why he was so strong, and he tried to crush him with all the strength he had. Suddenly, the boy's sword began to lift him up. It had developed many cracks. Still, he couldn't hold on and let go. But at the last moment, he jumped back. This time, he was incredibly lucky. Again. However, his weapon was broken, and he was left nearly defenseless. Kim was prepared and always carried another sword with him, which he intended to use. Suddenly, the demon was already behind him. He was indeed very fast despite his size. The hero didn't expect this at all and managed to shield himself at the last moment. However, the blow was strong, and he was sent flying several meters away. When the boy stopped, he tried to continue the fight, but he was exhausted, and his body ached. But the demon, despite its injury, remained very strong and was ready to tear him apart. It seemed the demon had exhausted all its strength and could no longer use its power or teleport as quickly. This was what the boy had been waiting for, and he immediately charged at it. The decisive moment of the battle had arrived. The demon tried to stop him, but it didn't succeed. Once again, the hero managed to dodge. Putting all his strength into it, he severed another limb. However, he wasn't planning to stop there. He wanted to keep fighting, taking advantage of the moment while the demon was weakened. But this time he aimed carefully. The strike had to be precise and powerful, right at the throat. And when he waited for that moment, he wanted to put all the strength he had left into it. The demon tried to resist. It wanted to throw the boy off of itself. But the hero waited. He continued to look for the right moment to attack. And he waited for the demon to expose its neck. Suddenly it happened. He was ready, and he struck. The blow was incredibly strong. With one sweep of his sword, Kim severed the monster's head. It was all over, and he rejoiced that he managed to handle it before night fell. The boy had won again, but it seemed the demon continued to breathe. Even without a head, it could still move. But this quickly passed and its body fell to the ground. The boy exhaled in relief, realizing he had been a step away from death this time. Immediately his new friends rushed to him, having watched the battle from a safe distance. The soldiers wouldn't have won without him, so they were grateful. However, the hero understood that he had just been lucky. As if it had been night, none of them would have survived. Suddenly, the severed head of the demon began to speak. It mocked the boy and the soldiers, but acknowledged its own defeat. Kim wanted to put an end to this. So, he simply finished it off by stabbing his sword into its eye. At that moment, he received a notification that his training was complete. The hero gained a massive amount of experience and power. Max explained that the demon he had defeated was the god of death and could command an army of the undead. Then the boy realized that after completing his training, he would have to fight it again, but then the demon would be much stronger than now. Max didn't want to hold the hero back and intended to repay him for helping them win the war. But the boy refused. He simply thanked him and walked away. At this point, he was about to enter the very doors that had appeared before him, and move on to a new, much tougher stage of his training. He hoped that behind the doors, his beloved and daughter would be waiting for him. More than anything in life, he wanted to see them again. However, the place he found himself in was shrouded in fog. Because of this, he couldn't see anything and moved blindly. Suddenly, he saw a strange structure ahead. Most likely, he needed to go there, so he walked. On his way, he encountered a strange man who asked who he was and how he had found this place. The stranger looked like a god, as he wore very unusual clothing and was of gigantic stature. He also recognized the item on the boy's arm. After all, it had once belonged to him until he lost it himself. Moreover, the man knew why the boy had come to him. Kim wanted to find the king, and the man was his vassal. The boy explained that he had wandered in the thick fog until he saw the temple and decided to enter. Furthermore, the man didn't think he could lie to him, so he believed him. But he pondered. His eyes became fearful. He looked up at the sky. It seemed he heard someone. He began to speak with his king. The king liked the main character. Kim could gain great power from him, but it would be very difficult to handle. It could become a curse rather than a gift. Moreover, a person with such power bore immense responsibility. The boy thought deeply, but at the same time he immediately agreed. He didn't understand how powerful the force could be, but he knew he needed it, and it was only for one reason, so he could meet the people he loved dearly, for whom he was willing to do anything. It seemed the man understood him, but suddenly, he touched him, unwilling to let go and relinquish that powerful force so easily. He had to understand the price that came with wielding it. Only those who could endure it would be able to claim it and become invincible. Suddenly, the boy felt unbearable pain and couldn't keep himself on his feet. The pain felt lethal, and this was just the beginning. He needed to do everything possible to endure it and survive. And he tried. Tears streamed from his eyes, but he persevered. The boy attempted to rise, but he couldn't manage it. Overwhelmed by pain, he lost consciousness and couldn't get back up. The man began to doubt whether he could withstand it when suddenly the boy came to and tried to stand again. The man silently watched, not intervening. The boy crawled, he continued to fight against the pain, but it wouldn't relent. Blood flowed from his mouth, he was bleeding heavily. He was incredibly stubborn and ready to do anything to gain this power. He wasn't going to give up as this was his only chance to reunite with his family. However, he realized he could no longer endure and wished for someone to just end it as it was unbearable. Just then, he heard a voice. The voice was very familiar. The spirit reminded him why he had to keep fighting and survive. But he wasn't listening. His eyes began to close. It seemed he was dying. Suddenly, he saw his wife and daughter before him. He didn't want to leave them and tried to reach out, but they were drifting away. Kim understood he couldn't just give up as he had promised to meet them again. Instantly, he managed to calm himself. The pain faded and he felt much better. Moreover, he hadn't died and couldn't understand how he managed to see his wife as it was because of her that he was still alive. His body housed the heart of a king, despite being just an ordinary boy who accidentally stumbled into their world. The heart of the king was a reward for his training, but the protagonist felt that it wasn't that simple. Who was that king, really? He had so many questions. The man was about to answer him if he could. The boy asked who that king was, the one he had heard about. But the man couldn't provide an answer. And when Kim asked again, he stopped him. Because time had passed and the boy had to leave his world, taking with him the gifts the king had left him. After a while, he simply vanished. The man understood that the king believed in the boy's potential. Because he wasn't like the others. There was something special about him. The boy gained a wealth of experience and new skills and suddenly found himself in a new, unfamiliar place. Among the people, there were many foreigners and he couldn't understand what they were talking about. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice. It was Yu Yungyu, who was overjoyed to see him and rushed to hug him. Suddenly, armored figures approached them, looking like soldiers. But why had everyone been gathered in one place, unable to escape, surrounded by walls? Just then, the guard's voice made them quiet and everyone stopped talking. The man began to introduce himself to the newcomers. He was one of the training participants who had been trapped in this world for over 7 years. His name was Walker Alvin. Kim realized that among them were not just people who had come with him to participate in the trials. But why could mysterious individuals have entered this place much earlier and remained here? There were so many of them. They were also trying to escape the dome that surrounded them all. And they thought Walker Alvin might be responsible for trapping everyone. They wanted revenge on him once they managed to break free. The man couldn't stand their bickering and chatter, so he yelled at them to shut up. It seemed people were very afraid of him, so they didn't want to anger him. They had no idea what he had done for them, so the furious man was ready to take them all down. He drew his sword but quickly managed to calm down. He tried to explain that the wall was created for their protection, as this place was so dangerous that any step could be their last. And the newcomers, who lacked sufficient strength, could easily perish. So he promised to let them out, but for now they had to stay inside the dome. Besides, he wasn't afraid for his own life as he was strong enough to handle all of them even if they banded together against him. The place they were supposed to go was the Village of Beginnings, and soon they would have to deal with the troubles and dangerous monsters that infested the area. For that, they needed to bypass the mountain range a few miles away. Beyond it lived real monsters who were incredibly strong. For there was an angel and a demon, and they were the most terrifying foes of humanity. They far outmatched all other monsters and would be very powerful. So, he warned the people to be more cautious and to stay away from the demon and the angel. However, the protagonist understood who they were talking about as he had previously faced a demon and managed to defeat it. After a while, they reached the settlement where they were to live. The people were astonished when they saw the magnificent city and were impressed by its scale. From this place, the city was to become their home and everything was free for them. But only for 10 days. After that, they would have to find food for themselves and take care of their own safety. Moreover, they needed to remember that their safety depended on a very strong clan. After some time, the people settled into their own homes. They were all placed in very small and uncomfortable rooms that didn't resemble the other buildings in the city at all. But they had no other choice as the dome surrounding them prevented them from going anywhere and forced them to stay with the others. So, Kim had no idea what to do. And in those 10 days they had something needed to be done as it was unclear how they were going to survive moving forward. Besides, he understood he needed to stay alive, knowing that this level was one of the toughest. And he remembered his most important mission and that he wanted to reunite with his family. Meanwhile, Yu Yungyu decided to take a shower. Taking advantage of his absence, the protagonist pulled out his diary. and he began to hope that the information in it had been updated. After all, he managed to find what he wanted to see the most. On one of the pages, it was written that they would soon be able to meet. Moreover, he noticed that pages that hadn't been accessible before were now opening, and he could read their contents. That's exactly what he began to do. But he didn't rush and carefully read every detail. The information was very important to him, and he tried not to miss anything. He had to read the pages several times as there were moments he didn't understand at all. Additionally, he did this very cautiously as he didn't want anyone to see him. However, after reading, he had many questions. Could it be that his greatest enemy was also in this place? Just then, his friend entered the room. The boy quickly closed his diary in front of him. But at night, he continued to read. Now, he finally understood how to survive in the new city, but there was no information about the demon and the angel and how to defeat them. Even in his diary, there was a lot of unknown information, and he realized he didn't have enough strength to fight them. Suddenly, a suspicious voice was heard outside the door. It became clear that people were looking for the protagonist. The boy stood up and was about to open the door, but he didn't know what would happen next as nothing in the diary mentioned it. The voice outside asked him to open up, as she wanted to tell him something. It was Yu Yoongyu who had woken up. He thought it was the owner of the house they were living in. However, the person began knocking on the door again, asking him to open it immediately. This all felt very suspicious, and Kim got scared. He grabbed his sword, ready to use it if danger arose. He froze and asked what the unknown person wanted from him. As it turned out, it was Dean from the clan in the city, and he had come to recruit the protagonist. The man assured him that he didn't need to worry so much and that he was under the protection of a powerful clan in the city. He also warned him that he was safe, as conflicts among the settlement's residents were forbidden, and he couldn't harm him in any way. The boy believed him and decided to let him into his room. Before him stood a polite and smiling guy who was happy to meet him. And when he saw that Yu Yoongyu was in the room, he asked to be alone with the hero. He introduced himself again, stating his name and who he was. The protagonist also introduced himself and introduced his friend. He tried to find out how Dean had heard about him and why he had chosen him. In fact, everyone knew that the protagonist was very strong and had performed well in training. The clan needed people like him, and they were offering him to join them. Moreover, the clan leader wanted to meet him personally and discuss all the details. He also apologized for coming to him so late, as it was an urgent matter. But why was everything happening at night? Why couldn't it be done during the day? He didn't know what his clan was about, but he didn't want to go anywhere because he thought it was a trap. His words made Dean nervous, as he didn't want to return without him. At that moment, he became very angry and ordered the protagonist to follow him in a different tone. Yu Yoongyu understood everything. Kim also drew his sword, as the situation was very tense. He understood everything and knew who Dean really was and what he wanted from him. He also knew that their clan was a lie from the start and that it was filled with ruthless killers and thugs. And he learned this from his diary, so he was very lucky. They were scum who lured people like him and forced them to kill others, innocent people. They could be responsible for his family's death, and he would never forgive them, let alone work with them. Dean couldn't believe the boy understood everything. So, he planned to take all their belongings, and if they didn't agree to hand everything over, he would kill them. As expected, the protagonist refused. He ordered him to leave, but Dean wasn't going to back down so easily. He didn't consider the boy a worthy opponent, but he didn't want a direct confrontation with him. To avoid drawing too much attention, he simply left, leaving them alone in the room. Suddenly, he reappeared, but now behind the protagonist. At that moment, he intended to stab him with his knife, but the boy managed to block the attack. Moreover, the enemy was very strong. After that, he vanished again as if he had teleported. Now, he was trying to attack Yu Yoongyu. And at that moment, Kim noticed him and was ready to deliver a strong and precise blow. He missed as the man disappeared again. His house was in ruins. He was filled with powerful energy, making it very hard to stay on his feet. Dean's mana and strength were incredible. It was hard for him to resist. Moreover, the enemy understood that the main character wasn't weak and his power level was very high. Killing him would be much harder than he thought. So he vanished again. But did he really just give up and retreat so easily? That wasn't all. Dean could turn invisible, which is why the men couldn't spot him. All they saw was his shadow darting around the room, ready to strike at any moment. Dean was invulnerable, so he was planning to take them out. First, he wanted to kill Kim. However, something happened that no one expected. Because the hero stabbed him with his own sword. It hurt, and he couldn't believe he had been seen. Immediately, he disappeared again. Due to his abnormal level of mana, the main character could sense him. This only made him angrier. It became very dangerous, so he wanted to leave the house as quickly as possible, where he could die. But Kim wouldn't let him just walk away. And he finished him off with a blow to the back. Dean was gravely injured and couldn't breathe. Weak and bleeding heavily, he collapsed to the ground and lost consciousness. When Yu Youngyu saw that Kim had managed to defeat him and was able to see him, he couldn't believe it. After all, he hadn't seen anything. They needed to figure out what to do with the guy's body, as it was clear they would be searched for soon. They didn't have a solid plan, so they had to think and act fast. But the hero calmed down. He didn't want to hide the fact that he had killed a man. The next day, news of this spread throughout the city. A warrior in armor approached the house where the main character lived. It was Max himself. He was trying to find Kim and Yu Youngyu, who were likely the killers. Finding nothing on the first floor, they began to head straight up to his room. The hero understood what was happening and calmly waited for him, while Yu Youngyu was extremely nervous. When he entered, he saw the body of his acquaintance in the room, and he knew that the deceased was a thug from a rival clan. However, he couldn't believe that the main character had managed to take him down and defeat such a strong opponent. Kim confirmed that he had beaten him in a duel. Then, he realized that he was standing before a very influential man, and he was quite important in the city, yet he didn't get angry over the murder. On the contrary, for the killing, he was planning to reward the guy with 30 gold coins. After all, the man was wanted, and only the main character had managed to deal with him and kill him. When Yu Youngyu heard this, he was overjoyed, as he hadn't expected things to turn out this way, especially since Max thought something serious had happened and that Yu Youngyu and Kim might have been in trouble. Suddenly, he turned to them with a proposal. He wanted the men to join his clan and become his comrades and warriors like him. This news shocked them greatly. Kim doubted the truth of his words, but the man was confident in his decision as he had never seen a rookie like the main character. Moreover, this offer was a great opportunity for him, because their clan was very strong and popular, and anyone would want to join. However, Max's partner thought he was rushing with his proposal. After all, first they needed to deal with the body of the dead criminal, and besides, the men were inexperienced. Moreover, they couldn't just take newcomers into their clan. But Max was really angry after hearing those words. It was hard not to notice that they were very strong and skilled warriors. And despite being newcomers, no one had ever defeated the dangerous criminal who was incredibly powerful. He wanted to recruit the main character specifically, since his friend wasn't as experienced as he was. He knew the guy was very strong and had performed well in the trials. When they returned with the offer, Kim turned them down, and that surprised them greatly. After all, being a clan member was a dream for everyone. It was a huge honor for him. However, the guy didn't even listen to him. Did he have much better options? Was he a newbie who had just entered their new world? Then he asked Yu Youngyu if he intended to join their clan. Yu Youngyu didn't respond. He just silently looked at the main character and also declined. They were impossible to convince, and the soldier resigned himself, promising to send them their reward in the evening. Besides, they needed to pay for the damages in the house. He also gave them some time to reconsider and accept his offer to join the clan. After all, he wanted to see them by his side and fight alongside them. After a while, their reward was brought to them. For the first time in their lives, they saw such a large sum of money. If they could get this money in real life, they would be very rich and wouldn't have to work for the rest of their lives. Yu Youngyu also wondered why Kim didn't accept their offer and didn't want to join the clan. But it seemed he had his reasons, which he didn't want to share. As it turned out, the main character had an idea and was unsure whether he should join the clan. In fact, he wanted to meet the Supreme Mage, and he wanted the guy to go with him and help him. While walking, the men managed to reach the central square of the city. It was there that they encountered a strange man. He allowed them to use the portal for 50 gold coins, but they had a completely different proposal for him. They had come for something else entirely and had an offer for the mysterious man. Kim promised to find the location of the laboratory. But after those words, the man looked at the guys suspiciously. As no one knew about the laboratory except for him, the guy offered him his services and promised to find the lost laboratory so he could work there. It seemed the offer intrigued the old man. After all, having his own laboratory was the dream of his entire life. Moreover, he realized that the hero was not an ordinary soldier, as he had rare items and armor. The bracelets on his arms looked very familiar. Abram pondered over his proposal. Still, he agreed, but due to his oath, he couldn't leave the portal and go with him. However, if they managed to find something, he promised to reward them. He also warned that if they tried to deceive him, they would feel pain worse than death. Those words scared them, but the hero agreed. Yu Youngyu couldn't understand how the main character found out about the secret laboratory. Moreover, by searching for the laboratory, they could no longer claim membership in the clan. It was known that the laboratory once belonged to the old man, but he lost it. There was a legend that he killed people and used their bodies for his magical experiments. He even had a nickname, and scary tales were told about him to children. Yu Youngyu began to feel in danger, but Kim reassured him. After all, the man was bound by his oath and couldn't leave the square, so he couldn't harm them. Cool, he found a strange place in the mountains. He saw a huge opening that could be the entrance to an underground laboratory. So they needed to climb up to take a closer look. If the words from his diary were to be believed, the laboratory had caused a lot of trouble in the city. Moreover, it was located near the settlement and was very well hidden. Also, the laboratory concealed a huge reward within it. And the effect of the materials he used during his experiments could be very powerful. Upon entering the underground, the guys saw a notification that they had discovered a new location. Also, by exploring the underground, they could unlock a new reward. And he understood that if he joined the clan, he wouldn't be able to claim the trophy. They moved on, trying to be as careful as possible. After all, there could be terrifying monsters in the cave, and they couldn't draw attention to themselves. Also, Abram couldn't find his laboratory because he remembered nothing. There had to be some reason for this, but the hero didn't know what had really happened to the man and why he had forgotten everything. Perhaps it was related to his oath. Or he could have lost his memory due to some powerful spell and ended up becoming the guardian of the portal. It was also very strange that the man had been trying to find the laboratory for many years but hadn't told anyone about it. Suddenly Kim stopped. Yu Youngyu did the same and was very frightened. After all, in front of them were the bodies of slain men from the skyscraper clan who had tried to find the laboratory's treasures many years ago. There were also many bodies of ordinary people, and they could be the ones Abram had experimented on. Because of this, Yu Youngyu was very angry. So he realized that the man was a true criminal. Suddenly, an earthquake began in the cave. The bodies of the people started to come to life. And after a while, all the dead rose and were ready for battle. Now it was clear why no one had managed to find the laboratory and why it was so dangerous. Kim prepared for battle. Yu Youngyu also drew his weapon. Suddenly, the monsters charged at them as they had to protect the secret place. The fight began. The monsters were very strong and hard to defeat. Moreover, they were almost immortal. All of this was due to the magic cast on them by the mage, as it was his magic that made them so powerful. The guy tried to fend off the monsters surrounding him. But there were too many. Suddenly, one of them managed to sneak up behind him and bit him. However, Kim used his skill and saved himself from death. Moreover, he was about to kill the monster, which he did immediately. Besides, the skin of the creatures was tough, so cutting through it required a lot of strength and energy. Still, they managed to win and all the enemies were dead. Yu Youngyu examined the bodies of the slain people, and he was shocked by the torture they had endured. Moreover, he noticed that in the body of one of them was a strange stone that shimmered. Kim tried to extract it. However, when he realized what it actually was, he couldn't believe his eyes. After all, it was an impulse, but how could it end up in the body of a monster? This was the very stone the mage used when he tried to create chimeras. So he decided to take it with him as a trophy and hoped it would come in handy in the future. Several days had passed since they entered the cave. However, their search yielded no results. They tried to rest and continue searching, wandering through its endless labyrinths. Each time they had to fight with monsters which kept multiplying. Still, they found a door and hoped it would be the entrance to the laboratory. That was where the reward they had been searching for so long was supposed to be. However, they realized that the door was locked. Yu Youngyu was about to chop the lock with his sword. And with a strong blow, the lock shattered, the door was open. Now they could calmly enter inside. The doors were very heavy, so they had to open them together. And still, after a while, they succeeded. A bright light shone from the laboratory room. What secrets did it hold? That was what they were about to find out. Upon entering, they saw a huge room filled with tools the man used for his horrific experiments. Inside a shell, there was the body of a man who had mutated. This was how the monsters were created, which then killed people. Meanwhile, events shifted to the main building of the skyscraper clan. Walker Alvin received a letter with important information. So he read it carefully, trying to make sense of everything. But after analyzing it all, he couldn't believe the information was true. After all, there wasn't a single word about the mysterious laboratory and the secret of the old man. It became clear that they were also searching for the laboratory and had spent a lot of their own effort on it. And the information they brought was just trash, completely useless. The letter mentioned an approximate location of the laboratory, which they had been searching for 2 whole months, but their search had been fruitless. The man simply couldn't believe that the solution had been so close to him all along and that it was actually very easy to find. He was furious at his servant for not being able to do his job and bringing him a false letter. In fact, the soldier just couldn't believe he had been wrong all along and searching in the wrong place. He also wondered if the main character had reconsidered joining his clan. He also asked about his friend Yu Yungyu's decision, but there was no information about them either. When the workers entered the new office, he exhaled heavily and leaned back in his chair. Could he really be mistaken? Meanwhile, the main character continued to examine the mysterious laboratory. It became clear that the laboratory was a place for research and the most terrifying experiments. Moreover, they reached the main room of the laboratory, as there were no more doors ahead. So, the hero carefully examined and began searching for what they had come for. Immediately, his attention was drawn to a huge cabinet filled with books. So when he approached it, he tried to open the doors to find what he needed. Additionally, he saw a huge number of test tubes and equipment used for conducting experiments. It was there that he found a mysterious potion that could come in handy. After all, this potion was the result of the scientist's research, and it could be very useful to him. Furthermore, his attention was caught by a purple bottle containing an unclear liquid, as nothing was mentioned about it in his diary. To be safe, they decided to take everything, and with that, their goal was complete. Suddenly, they noticed that the person in the test tube was no longer moving. It seemed he was alive. To check this, they approached him and began to observe, waiting for any movement. However, the unknown man did not move. But unexpectedly, after a while, he opened his eyes. After looking around for a bit, he closed them again. When the heroes realized that the creature was alive, they didn't know how to handle it properly. They decided to leave it as it was, since they weren't sure if it was a person or a mutated monster. At the last moment, Kim decided to break the glass with his sword because he wanted to find out who the mysterious creature really was. After a while, they returned to the old man, who was still sitting in the square, guarding the portal. He didn't expect it at all and was very surprised when he realized that the guys had found his laboratory. He just couldn't believe it. How did they manage to do that? The man was eager to learn about the whereabouts of the laboratory. But the main character wasn't in a hurry to tell him everything. He wanted to hear what the old man had actually been working on and how he was involved in all the experiments conducted in the lab. Abram didn't want to share and tried to deny his guilt. It seemed he didn't even know what was happening in his own laboratory, especially about the man in the vial, since it was unclear how long he had been there and how his body and mind had changed during that time. Moreover, the man remembered nothing and didn't know what specific experiments he had conducted or how long ago it was. But then why were they trying to find the laboratory? The reason was that the old man considered the lab his home and wanted to return at any cost. But how could he return? He was tied to the square and forced to guard the portal. As it turned out, he could leave it for a short time, and that was enough for him to find the laboratory. Then the main character began to speak. He described the place where he found the entrance to the caves in detail. It seemed the man started to remember everything. He could now recall in detail how he tried to disguise the entrance. The boy continued to speak, and the man kept recalling more information and details. Still, he rewarded the boys for their work. They received very valuable attributes and a sacred ring. With the attributes, the boys could teleport anywhere at any time. The ring given to him by the man was also very valuable and was under special protection. Moreover, the items were several levels above all those they had received at this level. It became clear that they had received a very good reward for their efforts and didn't regret risking it to find the hidden place. Just then, the old man laughed and was about to leave them. He promised to meet them later. And at that moment, he headed back to his laboratory. The boys were happy to have received such a valuable reward, but worried about letting him go so easily. However, they hoped that the old man wouldn't remember anything and would lose his memory again. Still, they hid from him the fact that they had stolen the most valuable items from the lab. After all, those potions could be the reason the old man was trying to find his base. When Abram teleported, his eyes sparkled with joy, and a wide smile spread across his face. Back in their own place, the boys talked about what had happened to them. They were pleased that they had managed to obtain rare items and were living in much better conditions. Besides, they planned to go to the Skyscraper clan and inform them about the underground laboratory, as they could be generously rewarded for it. They also needed to decide what to do with the potions they had stolen. After all, they had no idea what was in them and what would happen after they drank them. Moreover, the system couldn't recognize the potions or tell them about their properties. The only way to find out was to drink the potions one by one and see what would happen to them. The main character was sure that this could enhance their strength and help them survive. Yu Youngyu didn't trust him, but he had no choice and began to drink. First, he drank the blue vial, just as Kim had instructed. After that, he immediately started on the red one. He quickly noticed an incredibly strong energy spreading through his body. Suddenly, they felt an excruciating pain and burning throughout their bodies. The pain was so intense that they could barely stay on their feet. But gradually, their stats began to rise. It became clear that they couldn't drink it all at once, as its effects were incredibly powerful. The boy felt like his body was burning from the inside, yet his level was gradually rising and he was becoming stronger. He also remembered the suffering he had gone through in the past to increase his strength, and this effect was much weaker than what he had to endure before. His entire body was racked with terrible spasms, but he could control it and endure the incredible pain. Meanwhile, Yu Youngyu was having a much harder time and was screaming in agony. After a while, it all passed, and they exhaled in relief. They managed to survive the ordeal. Yu Youngyu didn't realize how much time had passed. The boys regretted drinking all the potions at once as it nearly killed them. They also noticed that after drinking the red potion, their health stats immediately increased and restored. Their stats and other attributes also grew several times. The scientist who developed these potions was a true genius. But why hadn't he drunk them after preparing them? He would have become incredibly strong. The boys had very little time left and were planning to head to the Skyscraper clan's house. They were going to go despite it being very late and dark outside. But after thinking it over again, they decided to wait until morning. Also, to ensure the correctness of their decision, the main character took out his diary to find out what awaited him next. He carefully began flipping through the pages, searching for new lines that might have appeared in the diary. Suddenly, he found another page that hadn't been turned before. The boy read each line carefully, going back, when suddenly he began to panic. But after a while, his face changed completely and he looked very frightened. After that, he grabbed his sword and rushed outside, urging Yu Youngyu to run with him. Yu Youngyu was shocked by his behavior, but he had no choice and ran along with him. After a while, they stood in front of the Skyscraper clan's house. The main character tried to knock, but no one answered for a long time. He realized that everything was going wrong and that there was very little time left. So he started shouting, hoping that one of the soldiers would hear him and open the door. Suddenly, a servant appeared before him. The hero insisted on seeing Walker Alvin, but the servant assured him that it was impossible. He needed to schedule a meeting in a few days, but when the hero mentioned the location of the laboratory they had found, the servant's expression changed. So he insisted again that Walker Alvin come out to him. Upon learning what was happening, the soldier appeared immediately. He thought the men had decided to join his clan and wanted to inform him of their decision. He also heard the hero's terrible scream and came to his voice. But when he found out that the boys had managed to find the laboratory, he couldn't believe them, as how could two novices find what he had been working on his whole life? Then he realized that the boy before him wasn't an ordinary person and possessed an incredible strength that no one else had. Moreover, he believed it wasn't a coincidence. Kim explained Abram's plans and what he was trying to achieve by finding the laboratory. After all, he was preparing for an attack on the city and intended to kill all its inhabitants. Furthermore, the old man was about to acquire a new body, the very one he had been growing in the vial for so long. The servant couldn't believe what he heard. Suddenly, a stranger approached them, interrupting their conversation. No way. Could it really be Abram? But how could he move into a new body so quickly? There was no doubt about it. It was indeed him. There was no doubt that it was really him in a new body. Kim realized he had made a huge mistake. After all, at the last moment he had hesitated to destroy the laboratory. And that decision played a cruel trick on him as his enemy stood right before him. Suddenly, he began to attack the main character, trying to deliver a fatal blow. Walker Alvin couldn't understand why the stranger immediately began to attack. But Abram wasn't interested in the soldier. He wanted to deal with the main character and his friend. The boy understood everything, but he had already drunk the potions and had no intention of returning them. Therefore, the opponent wanted to take his magical items and promised to kill him if he resisted. After all, he immediately noticed that the boy wasn't an ordinary person and he was intrigued by his personal belongings. Suddenly, strange things began to happen, as the creature started pulling all nearby items toward itself. Suddenly, a bunch of stone swords appeared in the air. They immediately flew toward the main character. However, Walker Alvin wasn't going to stand by and decided to join the fight, realizing that the unknown was very dangerous. He understood that this was the old man who had been chained to the square, but how had he managed to lift his own curse? Abram remained silent. However, the soldier didn't expect to hear an answer from him. Right now, he was preparing to fight him and he promised to talk to the boys later. But Kim rushed forward, ready to confront the enemy. The soldier couldn't believe he was capable of winning and tried to stop him. Abram began to use his own power. He directed an electric charge at the people, thinking it would be enough to stop them. Walker Alvin stopped, realizing he could die. However, the hero continued to move forward. He had a special weapon that Abram knew nothing about. With the help of his own ring, he could use his weapon against him. He managed to redirect the electric charge and send it back to the opponent. But the lightning passed by and only grazed the enemy. And then he realized what a huge mistake he made by giving the main character the ring. Walker Alvin understood he was wrong. After all, the boys weren't novices, they were experienced warriors. Taking advantage of the moment when the enemy was distracted, his servant circled around him. He delivered a powerful blow to his back. The hit was so strong that the ground beneath them cracked. However, there was no enemy there. At the last moment, Abram managed to escape. He realized that without the elixirs the boys had stolen from him, his body was too weak and he hurried to engage them in battle. Suddenly, he found himself trapped as a chunk of ice covered his body. It turned out to be a girl who had come to help. She couldn't believe that the old man she had seen guarding the portal was right in front of her. Very soon, a huge crowd gathered outside, along with the entire skyscraper clan. Abram made a huge mistake when he decided to go against all of them. After all, each member of the clan was a very dangerous warrior with special abilities. Therefore, he needed to retreat to prepare better. This wasn't the end, and very soon he planned to return again with new strength. And just like that, he simply vanished, leaving a mountain of ice floating in the air. The woman couldn't do anything as the man had the ability to teleport and even her strong magic couldn't hold him. Still, Walker Alvin wanted to figure out what was really happening. So he ordered the boys to follow him, as he wanted to talk to them. Kim explained that they had managed to find the laboratory and drink the magical potions made from hundreds of human lives. The man realized that all this time they had been mistaken as the solution was so close. They also realized that the guys weren't skilled as they had drunk the potions that the scientist had made for himself. The potions could elevate a person to an incredible level. If a thief drank them, he would be unstoppable. Now everyone understood the criminal's plan. It became clear why he had been trying to find his own laboratory all these years. It was also known that the old man had always hated people and was trying to unleash his aggression while gathering the necessary ingredients for his magical potion. But how had the old man managed to lift the curse and return to the laboratory? The main character had no idea. They realized that Abram would now try to make new potions for himself, so they needed to stop him. Besides, Walker Alvin knew the old man and understood that he wouldn't be stopped easily. He also knew that, without the potions, the criminal wasn't that strong. He wanted to thank the main character because it was thanks to him that they had a chance to stop Abram. Suddenly, he stopped. He couldn't understand how the main character knew about the oratory and that the man would seek revenge. Then Kim realized he had revealed too much and feared that Walker Alvin might start to suspect him. He didn't know what to do. Should he tell him about the diary? Just then, a soldier burst into the room and ordered Walker Alvin to follow him immediately. The soldier was terrified and couldn't explain what was happening. But after catching his breath, everything became clear. At that moment, a wave of monsters was rapidly approaching the city. Meanwhile, chaos erupted in the city. All the people who could hold a weapon took up arms to defend themselves. They tried to stop the wave of monsters that had begun to break into the city and were killing people. But there were too few of them, and they didn't have enough resources.